My name is Isabella. When I was 17, my parents told me we needed a family vacation to hit reset. Just the three of us. No little brother, no work calls, no distractions. I thought they were messing with me, but when they booked flights to Barcelona, I bought it. "This is our fresh start," my mom said, her voice soft like a breeze, though her eyes slid away from mine. I wasn't the perfect daughter. I was obsessed with drawing, but I'd gotten suspended for arguing at school, and the mural I painted on the classroom wall had the principal fuming. Still, I never imagined those things were enough for them to whisk me out of the country and then vanish. That spring, I was a junior in high school in Jacksonville, Florida. My parents ran an event planning business, galas, weddings, corporate parties. They were always stressed, always on the phone, always fighting about budgets or clients. Our house was a revolving door of tension, with me and my little brother caught in the crossfire. I'd gotten used to their shouting matches, but when they sat me down one evening, their faces calm for once, I felt a spark of hope. "Barcelona," my dad said, holding up the plane tickets like a trophy, "a week to reconnect." My mom nodded, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. I wanted to believe them. God, I did. The flight was long, but I was buzzing with excitement. I'd never been to Europe. I sketched the clouds outside the plane window, imagining cobblestone streets and sunlit cafes. When we landed, Barcelona was everything I'd dreamed. The sun spilled gold over La Rambla. Street musicians played guitars, and the air smelled of coffee and sugar-dusted churros. We wandered through the Gothic quarter, my mom pointing out old buildings, my dad snapping photos. At Sagrada Familia, we stood under those towering spires, and my mom hugged me from behind while my dad fiddled with his camera. For a moment, we felt like a real family, one that could heal. Our first night, we ate at a tiny restaurant by the port. The tables were crammed close, candles flickering, waves crashing outside. My dad ordered a glass of red wine, swirling it like he was some kind of connoisseur. My mom wore her emerald green dress, the one she saved for special occasions, her lips painted coral. I ordered paella, picking at the shrimp while texting my best friend, Lily, back home. "It's going okay," I typed. "I think they're really trying." My mom caught me smiling at my phone and raised an eyebrow. "No phones, Bella," she said, but her tone was gentle, almost playful. I put the phone down, my chest warm with something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. The next morning we had breakfast at a cafe near our hotel. The air was crisp, the kind that makes you feel alive. My dad got his usual cortado, sipping it while flipping through a guidebook. My mom nibbled on a croissant, her coral lipstick leaving faint marks on the napkin. I had a hot chocolate, thick and rich, and I doodled on a napkin. A quick sketch of the cafe's tiled floor. "You're always drawing," my dad said, half smiling. I shrugged, but it felt good, like he was noticing me for once. We talked about our plans. The Picasso Museum, Park Güell, maybe a boat ride. My mom leaned forward, her eyes bright. "This is what we needed," she said, "just us." I let myself believe it. I mean, things hadn't been great at home. I'd always been the artsy kid, more interested in sketchbooks than grades. I'd failed chemistry, gotten into shouting matches with classmates, and that mural incident didn't help. My parents were always on my case, about my attitude, my future, my wasted potential, but in Barcelona, they seemed different, softer, like they wanted to fix things. I wasn't naive, I knew we had cracks, but I thought this trip could be the glue. That afternoon we walked along the beach. The sand was warm under my sneakers, and seagulls wheeled overhead. My mom linked her arm through mine, something she hadn't done since I was a kid. "Isn't this perfect?" she asked. I nodded, even though I noticed her glancing at my dad, who was trailing behind, checking his phone. I pushed the thought away. They were here, with me, in this beautiful city. That had to mean something. Looking back, I see the signs I missed. My mom's fidgeting hands, my dad's distracted stares. But at 17, I was too caught up in the magic of it all, the colors of the markets, the laughter of strangers, the idea that we could be a family again. I didn't know that in less than 24 hours, I'd be alone, with nothing but a crumpled note and a heart that felt like it was breaking in slow motion. The second day in Barcelona started bright, the kind of morning where the world feels like it's rooting for you. We'd planned to visit the Picasso Museum, but my mom suggested a quick detour first. "Let's swing by La Boqueria," she said, her voice light but her fingers drumming on the cafe table. "Grab some souvenirs, maybe those little ceramic tiles you like." My dad nodded, already scrolling through his phone. I didn't think twice. "Sure," I said, grabbing my sketchbook. "Sounds fun." La Boqueria was a riot of color. Stalls piled with blood oranges, glistening olives and jams in every shade of red. The air buzzed with vendors calling out in Spanish, tourists haggling, and the clink of coins. I wandered a few steps ahead, sketching a quick outline of a fruit stall, while my parents trailed behind. "20 minutes, Bella," my mom called. "Meet us by the entrance." I gave a thumbs up, too caught up in the chaos to notice her tone, clipped, almost urgent. I lost track of time, maybe half an hour, sketching and weaving through the crowd. When I got back to the entrance, they weren't there. I figured they'd wandered off, so I waited, leaning against a lamppost, watching families and couples pass by. 20 minutes stretched into an hour. My phone battery was low, but I sent a text. "Where are you guys?" No reply. I called my mom, straight to voicemail. My dad's phone, same thing. A knot started forming in my stomach, but I told myself they were probably lost in the market. Barcelona was huge, right? Easy to get turned around. Another hour passed. The sun was higher now, the air thicker. I tried calling again, sent more texts. "This isn't funny. Where are you?" Nothing. The knot in my stomach tightened, and my hands started to shake. I pushed through the market one more time, scanning every stall, every face, half expecting to see my mom's green dress or my dad's baseball cap. They were gone. I don't know when the panic really hit, but by the time I stumbled back to the hotel, my throat was tight and my eyes were stinging. At the front desk, I asked for my parents, my voice wobbling. The receptionist, a guy with a thin mustache, frowned and checked his computer. "They checked out this morning," he said, his English heavily accented. I stared at him. "What? No, that's not right. We're here together." He shrugged, tapping the screen. "No record. They left." My legs felt like they might give out. I begged him to check again. He did, then shook his head. "Sorry, miss." I ran upstairs, my sneakers slapping against the tiled hallway. My keycard didn't work. I pounded on the door, calling their names, my voice cracking. A housekeeper heard me and used her master key to open it. The room was empty. No suitcases, no clothes, not even my mom's perfume bottle on the nightstand. My backpack, my constant companion with my sketchbook, wallet, and charger, was gone. I sank to the floor, my breath coming in short gasps. This couldn't be real. I checked my phone again, now at 3% battery. I called, texted, left voicemails. "Mom, Dad, please, where are you? I'm freaking out." Nothing. The screen went black and I just sat there, staring at the blank hotel carpet, my mind racing. Were they hurt? Kidnapped? But why would they check out? Why take my stuff? The truth started creeping in, cold and sharp, but I pushed it away. They wouldn't do this. They were my parents. I don't know how I got the strength to move, but I went back to the receptionist begging for help. He looked uncomfortable, offering to call the police, but I didn't know what to say. My parents left me sounded insane. I wandered out of the hotel, the streets blurring as tears welled up. I kept dialing their numbers from a payphone I found, using the last euro in my pocket. Voicemail, every time. I sent one final text before the payphone cut off. "Is this a joke? I'm scared. Please come back." That night, I ended up on a bench near the port. The air was chilly, the kind that seeps into your bones. The sound of waves crashing felt like it was mocking me, each one louder than the last. I hugged my knees, my thin jacket doing nothing against the wind. I'd imagined a lot of awful things in my life, failing school, losing friends, but never this. never my own parents leaving me in a foreign country, like I was a piece of luggage they didn't want to carry anymore. The next morning, I checked my jacket pocket for the 100th time, hoping for a miracle. That's when I found it, a folded piece of paper tucked deep inside, my dad's handwriting, neat and precise. "You're 17, strong enough to stand on your own." No explanation, just those words, cold and final, like the snap of a thread I'd been clinging to. I read it over and over, my hands shaking, until the words blurred with my tears. This wasn't a mistake, they'd planned it. I don't know how long I sat there, the note crumpled in my fist. The world felt like it was shrinking, like I was shrinking. I was alone in a city I didn't know, with no money, no passport, no phone. Everything I had, my sketches, my ID, my sense of safety, was gone. Not in some bad dream, but in a real, aching moment. I realized they hadn't just left me behind, they'd erased me from their lives. The days that followed were a haze. I walked until my feet burned, my sneakers rubbing blisters raw. I stuck to narrow alleys, avoiding strangers' eyes, terrified of being noticed, but even more terrified of being invisible. Hunger gnawed at me, a constant ache that made my head spin. I'd pass cafes, the smell of fresh bread and coffee taunting me, but I had nothing to buy, even a crumb. Nights were the worst. I'd curl up on benches or under shop awnings, the cold stone pressing into my side, my arms wrapped tight around myself to stop the shaking. Every creak, every footstep made me flinch. I wasn't just scared of the dark, I was scared of being nowhere, belonging to no one. By the 4th day, hunger had turned everything bitter. My mouth tasted like ash and my legs felt like they might give out. I passed a small eatery on a quiet street, the kind with checkered tablecloths and a chalkboard menu. A tray of empanadas sat on the windowsill, golden and steaming. I didn't think, I just reached out, my hand trembling, hoping to grab one before anyone saw. But I wasn't fast enough. My hand froze mid-reach, the empanada just inches from my fingers. A voice, low and steady, cut through the haze of my hunger. "Stealing, are you?" I turned, heart pounding, expecting anger or a call to the police. Instead, I saw a woman, maybe 70, with silver hair tied in a loose bun, her apron dotted with painted flowers, her eyes locked onto mine, not with judgment but with something else, like she could see every crack in me I was trying to hide. I couldn't speak, my throat was dry, my body trembling from days of nothing but air and fear. She tilted her head, studying me. "Hungry?" she asked. I nodded, barely, afraid moving too much might break me. "Come inside. You eat, you work. Wash dishes until they shine." Her tone wasn't soft, but it wasn't cruel either. It was solid, like a hand pulling me up from a fall. I didn't know if she was serious, but I followed her into the eatery, my legs wobbly. Her name was Clara. She'd run this place, a cozy hole in the wall called La Luz, for over 40 years. No husband, no kids, just a tabby cat named Luna, who lounged on the counter and hands rough from years of mixing dough and sketching. She'd been a painter once, she said, though she didn't elaborate. The eatery smelled of warm bread and herbs, the kind of place where locals lingered over coffee and tourists stumbled in by accident. I stood there dirty and lost, feeling like I didn't belong in this pocket of warmth. Clara pointed to a sink piled with greasy pans and plates. "Start there," she said, handing me a sponge. I didn't argue. The water was ice cold, the soap stinging my cracked hands, but I scrubbed like my life depended on it. Maybe it did. I washed over 30 dishes, my arms aching, the clatter of plates drowning out the noise in my head. When I finished, Clara inspected each one, holding them to the light. "Good enough," she said, and handed me a plate with 2 empanadas, still warm, the crust flaky and golden. I ate so fast I barely tasted them, the food hitting my stomach like a shock. Clara watched, not saying a word, then pointed to a staircase in the back. "Up there, last room on the left. Not fancy, but it's better than the street." I wanted to ask why she was doing this, why she cared, but my voice wouldn't come. She'd already turned back to her dough, kneading it with those steady hands, like helping a stranger was just another day. The room was tiny, barely big enough for a single bed, a rickety desk, and a lamp that flickered yellow. The blanket was thin, patched in places, but it was clean. I curled up under it, my body heavy, and for the first time in 4 days I slept. No crashing waves, no growling stomach, no fear of being forgotten, just quiet, and the faint hum of Clara moving downstairs. The next morning I woke to the smell of coffee and sizzling oil. I stumbled into the kitchen, half expecting Clara to change her mind and kick me out. Instead, she was already at the stove, flipping tortillas. Luna, the cat, blinked at me from a stool. Clara didn't look up. "Eat," she said, sliding a plate across the counter. "A fresh empanada and a slice of orange. Then learn to knead dough." I hesitated, but her tone left no room for debate. I ate the food grounding me, and followed her to a flour-dusted table. Clara didn't teach with long explanations. She showed me once how to press the dough, how to fold it just right, then nodded for me to try. My first attempt was a mess, lumpy and uneven. She didn't laugh or scold, just said, "Again, better next time." I kept at it, my hands clumsy but learning. She taught me other things too, how to glaze pastries with a small brush, how to tell when the oven was hot enough by its. It wasn't just about food, it was about focus, about making something from nothing. Clara never asked about my past, not why I was alone, not what had happened. Maybe she saw it in my eyes, the way they darted when someone raised their voice, the way I flinched at sudden noises. Or maybe she just knew some stories don't need telling. I didn't ask about her either, though I noticed things, the faded paint stains on her fingers, the way she hummed old Spanish songs when she thought no one was listening. Luna would curl up near me while I worked, her purring a small comfort. For the first time, I felt like I was somewhere, not just drifting. Days turned into weeks. I woke before dawn, helped Clara open the eatery, and worked until the last customer left. I swept floors, waited tables, scrubbed counters. My hands got tougher, my blisters turning to calluses. I learned to smile at regulars, to carry trays without spilling, to laugh when Clara teased me about my lumpy dough. It wasn't easy. My body ached, and some nights I'd lie awake, the weight of my parents' note still heavy in my chest. But in that small kitchen, with Luna's soft meows and the warmth of the oven, I started to believe I could survive. I didn't talk much at first. Clara didn't push. She'd correct me with a glance or a quick "not like that," but there was no pity in her eyes, no questions I had to dodge. One morning, while we were shaping dough for churros, she caught me sketching on a napkin, a quick drawing of Luna curled up by the window. She picked it up, studied it, and said, "You've got a good eye, don't waste it." It was the closest she came to asking who I was. I nodded, my throat tight, and kept working. Living with Clara wasn't just about having a roof or food. It was about finding a rhythm, a reason to get up each day. I'd been so sure I was nothing, nobody, when my parents left me. But sweeping those floors, serving plates of steaming food, I felt like I was part of something, even if it was small. I didn't know how long I'd stay, didn't know what came next. I just knew that for the first time since that bench by the port, I wasn't afraid of the dark. Some nights I'd sit on the edge of my bed, staring at the crumpled note I'd kept, my dad's words burned into me, "Strong enough to stand on your own." I hated that note, hated them, but I couldn't throw it away. It was proof of what they'd done, but also a challenge I was starting to answer. Clara's eatery wasn't home, not yet, but it was a place where I could breathe, where I could start to piece myself back together, and maybe, just maybe, figure out who I was without them. After a few months at Clara's eatery, the raw edge of hunger faded, and my hands got used to the rhythm of kneading dough and scrubbing pans. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was starting to think beyond the next meal, the next night. I couldn't stay the girl my parents left behind forever. That note in my pocket, my dad's cold words. Strong enough to stand on your own, still stung, but it was also a fire under me. I needed to prove I was more than their abandonment, not just to them, but to myself. One morning, while taking out the trash behind La Luz, I spotted something in the alley. A cracked tablet, half buried under a pile of cardboard. It was scratched up, the charging cable frayed like it'd been chewed by a dog. I don't know why I picked it up. Maybe because it looked as broken as I'd felt. I smuggled it upstairs, hiding it under my pillow like a secret. That night, after the eatery closed, I taped the cable together and plugged it in. It took 3 days of coaxing, but when the screen flickered on, dim, glitchy, but alive, I felt a spark I hadn't in years. It was mine, something I'd salvaged. I started using the tablet at night, crouching by the window to catch the faint Wi-Fi signal from the cafe next door. At first, I didn't know what I was looking for. I'd scroll through random sites, my fingers clumsy on the cracked screen. Then I stumbled on a free online course for a high school equivalency exam, like the GED back home. It hit me. I'd never finished junior year. My parents had taken that from me too. I signed up, not sure if I could do it, but desperate to try. By day I worked at the eatery, waiting tables, glazing pastries, joking with regulars who'd started calling me Bella instead of the quiet girl. By night I studied under that flickering lamp in my tiny room. I relearned algebra, scribbling equations on the backs of takeout menus. I read American history, the words feeling strange after months of Spanish. I memorized chemistry formulas, sketching them next to doodles of Luna sleeping. It was grueling, my eyes burning from the screen, my brain foggy from long shifts. But every lesson, every quiz I passed, felt like a brick I was laying to build something new. Clara noticed the late-night glow under my door but never asked why. Once, while we were cleaning the kitchen, she saw my napkin sketches, swirling patterns inspired by the eatery's tiles. "Keep at it," she said, her voice gruff but warm. "You've got a gift." I clung to that, her words a lifeline. I wasn't just a runaway anymore. I was someone who could learn, who could create. A year later, I took the equivalency exam at a community center, an hour's bus ride from La Luz. My hands shook as I filled in the bubbles, but when the results came, passed, not perfect, but enough, I cried for the first time since Barcelona's port. It wasn't just a certificate, it was proof I could do more than survive. I showed Clara the letter, expecting her to shrug it off. She didn't. "Good," she said, handing me a fresh churro. "Now what's next?" That question stuck with me. I'd always loved art, but I'd never thought of it as a future. Back in Florida, my parents called my drawing a hobby, a waste of time. But in Clara's kitchen, watching her paint delicate designs on cakes, I started to see it differently. I went back to the tablet, diving into free YouTube tutorials on graphic design. I learned about color theory, typography, how to use clunky free software to make logos and posters. It was like my sketches coming to life in a new way, each design a small victory. I started small, offering to redesign La Luz's menu board for Clara. She raised an eyebrow but let me try. I spent nights tweaking fonts, sketching olive branches and sunbursts, until it was done, a clean, bold design that made the old chalkboard pop. Customers noticed, complimenting Clara, who just grunted and pointed at me. "Her work," she said. That was the first time I felt like I wasn't invisible. Word spread. A cafe down the street asked for a new logo, then a bakery wanted flyers. I charged what I could, €5 here, 10 there, saving every coin in a tin under my bed. I called my little operation Bella Creations, a name that felt like a reclaiming of myself. I wasn't just Isabella, the girl left behind. I was building something, even if it was small. One evening, while wiping tables, I found a crumpled newspaper someone left behind. The business section caught my eye, a story about a Spanish startup making waves. At the bottom was a tiny stock code. I don't know what possessed me, but I scribbled it down. That night, I borrowed a prepaid Visa from a supplier I'd helped with his kids' English homework. Using €50 I'd saved, I invested through a free trading app I'd found. It was a long shot, a whim, but I wanted to see if I could make something happen. 2 weeks later, the stock tripled. I stared at the numbers on my tablet, my heart racing. It wasn't a fortune, but it was real. proof that what I'd learned, what I'd risked, could grow. I cashed out, splitting the money. Half went to a new oven for Laluz. The old one had been coughing smoke for months. Clara saw it delivered, her eyes narrowing. "You?" she asked. I nodded, shy. She didn't say thanks, just handed me a coffee and said, "Don't stop." The other half I kept, not for anything specific, just for the dream I was starting to name. Graphic design became my obsession. I devoured blog posts, watched tutorials by designers who'd started from nothing, scribbled notes on pastry bags and cardboard scraps. I learned about branding, how to make a business feel alive through colors and shapes. I took on more clients, tourist shops, local bars, each project a step towards something bigger. I saved enough to buy a new tablet, my first real purchase. Its sleek screen a far cry from the cracked one I'd salvaged. It felt like a piece of me, something no one could take away. Clara saw the change, even if she didn't say much. One night, as we closed up, she caught me sketching a logo on a napkin. "You don't walk like you're scared anymore," she said, her voice quiet. "You walk like you know where you're going." I didn't know how to respond, but inside I felt it, a shift. I wasn't just the girl from the port bench. I was someone who could create, who could choose. I started sending money back to Florida, not to my family, but to youth art programs in Jacksonville. I'd find them online, summer camps, free drawing classes, mental health groups for kids who'd been kicked out or left behind. I never signed my name, just someone who made it through. It wasn't much, but it felt like giving back the hope Clara had given me. Each transfer was a reminder. I wasn't defined by what my parents did, I was defined by what I did next. By the time I turned 19, Bella Creations was more than a side hustle. I had clients across Barcelona, small businesses mostly, but enough to keep me busy. I helped tourists design custom postcards, taught a few exchange students how to make digital flyers for extra cash. I didn't post about it online, didn't tell anyone back home. My old life in Florida felt like a ghost, and I wasn't ready to face it. But in Barcelona, in that little room above La Luz, I was starting to see a future. Not a perfect one, but one I could build. I kept that crumpled note from my dad tucked in a drawer now instead of my pocket. I didn't read it anymore, but I couldn't throw it away. It was a scar, a reminder of where I'd started. Clara's eatery, Luna's purring, the hum of my tablet late at night. Those were my present. And Bella Creations? That was my way forward, a path I was carving one design, one choice, at a time. 3 years into building Bella Creations, I'd carved out a life in Barcelona. My days were filled with client meetings, sketching logos, and late nights tweaking designs on my tablet. Clara's eatery was still my anchor, Luna's purring a constant in the background. I wasn't rich, but I was steady, and that was more than I'd ever expected after those nights on the port bench. I thought I'd left my past behind, buried it with that crumpled note I hadn't touched in years, but the past has a way of finding you. It was a crisp fall morning, the kind where the air smells of leaves and coffee. I was in the kitchen helping Clara roll dough when she walked in with a newspaper someone had left on a table. She didn't say anything, just set it down and tapped a small box in the real estate section. I leaned over, the dim light catching the bold print. Foreclosure property, beachfront lot, Jacksonville, Florida. Auction end of month. The address hit me like a punch. Every number, every letter was etched in my memory from school forms, birthday cards, the life I'd had before Barcelona. It was my parents' house, the one they'd bought after leaving me, the one I'd seen in their smug online photos captioned, "New beginnings, grateful for peace." I stared at the paper, my hands still dusted with flour. Clara watched me, her eyes sharp but quiet. "What's this?" she asked, though I think she knew. I didn't answer right away. My mind was spinning, not with sadness, but with something else, something heavier. It was like the world had handed me a key to a door I thought was locked forever. That house wasn't just a building, it was a symbol of their betrayal, their choice to erase me, and now it was slipping from their grasp. That night after the eatery closed, I sat in my room and opened my tablet. I researched the auction, every detail. Dates, bidding rules, legal requirements. Bella Creations had grown enough to give me savings, not a fortune, but enough for a move like this. I registered to bid under my company's name, keeping my identity hidden. No one could know it was me. If my parents recognized me, everything could unravel. I booked a flight to the US, my first in 4 years. As the plane took off from Barcelona, I stared out at the clouds, thick and endless like a new world. This wasn't going home. This was stepping into a role I'd never imagined, someone with the power to close a chapter. I landed in Jacksonville on a freezing winter morning, the kind that makes your breath catch. The auction was held in a gravel parking lot outside the county building, a cluster of people in heavy coats clutching numbered paddles. I wore a charcoal suit, my hair tied tight, a scarf wrapped around my neck to blend in. Clara stood beside me, her presence calm and unshakable, like she'd been through worse than this. The bidding started fast, numbers climbing higher than I'd expected. A middle-aged man in a cheap suit, probably a broker, kept raising his paddle, glancing at us with a frown, confused by the 2 women he didn't recognize. I nodded to Clara, and she raised our number, her hands steady. I didn't flinch, even as my heart pounded. When the auctioneer's gavel fell, declaring sold to number 127, I didn't smile or exhale. I just stared at the printed confirmation, the address of their precious house now tied to Bella Creations. It wasn't victory I felt, not exactly. It was closure, like shutting a door I'd been too scared to touch for years. Clara and I walked back to the rental car in silence. Only when we were inside did she speak. "You could have let it go," she said, her voice low. "But you faced it. That's what makes you different." I nodded, my throat tight. The hardest part was still coming. The meeting was set for a small real estate office on the edge of Jacksonville, a nondescript place with beige walls and fluorescent lights, perfect for quiet deals. I'd arranged it through an attorney, the only person who knew my full story. I arrived early, dressed in the same charcoal suit, my hair in a high bun, the scarf still around my neck. I sat alone in the conference room, a glass of water untouched in front of me, listening to the clock tick. I wasn't nervous, not exactly. It was more like I was watching my 17-year-old self again, curled up in a Barcelona alley, waiting for an answer that never came. The door opened. My mom walked in first, wearing a gray sweater and oversized sunglasses that hid half her face. She held her chin high, clinging to a faded elegance, like she could still control the room. My dad followed, his shoulders slumped, clutching a worn leather folder. They sat across from me, their faces guarded, no flicker of recognition. To them, I was just a rep from the company that had bought their house. I let the silence stretch, my hands folded on the table until I reached up and unwound my scarf. The air shifted, like a string snapping. My mom stiffened, her lips parting but no sound coming out. My dad blinked, then looked away, his jaw tight. "We've met before," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was hammering. "In Barcelona when I was 17. My mom's hand flew to her sunglasses, gripping them like a shield. My dad's folder slipped, papers scattering. Neither spoke, so I did. "You took me to Spain, promised a fresh start. Then you left me. No money, no passport, no explanation except a note saying I was strong enough to stand on my own." My mom swallowed hard, her fingers twisting her sweater. We thought it was better," she said, her voice fraying. "We thought if we disappeared, you'd hate us less." I tilted my head, fighting the bitter smile tugging at my lips. "Better? You left me in a foreign country, alone, with nothing. You didn't say goodbye. You chose to erase me." My dad still wouldn't look up, his hands clenched on the table. I slid the deed across to them. "I'm the one who bought your house. The paperwork's legal. You have 30 days to leave." My mom's sunglasses slipped, revealing eyes red with tears. "You can't do this, Isabella," she whispered. "Can't I?" I leaned back, my voice calm but sharp. "I waited for you to come back, just once. You never did. I don't need your apologies now. I need this to be over." Then my mom said something that stopped me cold. "We didn't want to leave you, Isabella. We had no choice." Her voice broke and she looked at my dad, who finally met my eyes, his face pale. "We were in trouble," she continued. "Our business, we got caught in a scam, overbooked events, took money we couldn't repay. Creditors were after us, the police too. If we'd kept you with us, you'd have been dragged into it, court, maybe worse. We left you to protect you." I stared at them, the words sinking in like stones. This wasn't just about them wanting me to stand on my own. They'd been running from the law, from their own mess, and I was collateral damage. They'd abandoned me not out of some twisted, tough love, but to save themselves. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. I wanted to scream, to demand why they couldn't have told me, why they let me think I was nothing, but I didn't. I'd spent years carrying their silence. I wasn't going to beg for answers now. "You protected yourselves," I said finally, my voice low. "You chose your safety and left me to drown. I didn't need your protection. I needed my parents." My dad's head dropped again, his shoulders shaking. My mom's tears fell, but I knew they weren't for me, not really. They were for the life they'd lost, the house they couldn't keep. Clara walked in then, holding a folder. She didn't speak, just set it on the table and gave me a nod, her eyes fierce but calm. "The move-out schedule will be sent tomorrow," she said, her voice like steel. "If you need relocation help, our company can recommend someone." My mom shook her head, sobbing now. "We're your family, Isabella." I stood, my chair scraping the floor. Family doesn't abandon each other in a foreign country and walk away like their kid never existed. You made your choice. Now I've made mine. I walked out, my scarf in my hand, the door clicking shut behind me. I didn't look back. I didn't need to hear another word. I'd lived in their silence long enough to know some things don't need explaining. They just need ending. Outside, the winter air hit my face, sharp and clean. For the first time in years, I felt free, like I'd finally cut the last thread tying me to their betrayal. Clara followed, her hand brushing my shoulder. "You did what you needed," she said. I nodded, my eyes on the horizon. The house was mine now, but what I did with it would be my story, not theirs. Walking out of that real estate office, I felt lighter, like I'd shed a weight I'd carried since Barcelona. The house, my parents' house, was mine now, but it wasn't about owning it. It was about rewriting what it meant. That place, once a symbol of their betrayal, was going to be something else, something better. I didn't know exactly what yet, but the seed of an idea was growing, fed by the years I'd spent rebuilding myself. Less than a week after the meeting, my mom's posts started appearing online. Not apologies, not explanations, but venom. "Our daughter's been poisoned by ambition," she wrote. "She stole our home, turned against her own blood." Comments poured in, some pitying her, some raging at me, most from strangers who didn't know a thing about my story. I didn't respond. I didn't need to win an argument on the internet. I needed to win in real life, and that meant turning the house into something that mattered. I flew back to Jacksonville with Clara, who'd insisted on coming, saying she wasn't too old for one more adventure. The house looked smaller than I remembered, its paint peeling, the lawn overgrown. Stepping inside was like walking into a ghost. The creaky floorboards, the faded yellow walls, the live, laugh, love sign in the living room. It all screamed of the life I'd lost. But I didn't linger on the hurt. I gotta work. I started renovating, pouring my savings from Bella Creations into the project. I tore down the heavy curtains, letting light flood the rooms. The yellow walls became a soft blue, calm and welcoming. I replaced the stiff furniture with cozy fabric sofas, warm bedside lamps, and secondhand bookshelves stuffed with novels and art books from local libraries. That cheesy sign came down, swapped for a simple wooden frame I carved myself. "You were not born to be invisible." The master bedroom, where my parents once slept, became a shared space with bunk beds, new mattresses, soft pillows, and lockboxes for personal belongings. Every change was a step toward erasing their mark and building something new. I named the house New Horizon. It wasn't just a shelter, it was a promise, a place for girls who'd been left behind like I was. I wanted them to know that when their first light went out, there could be another. Clara took charge of the kitchen, her hands as steady as ever, teaching me how to scale her empanada recipe for a crowd. She grumbled about the fancy new stove, but smiled when no one was looking. Luna, the cat, came too, curling up on the porch like she owned the place. The first girls arrived a month after we opened. Ava, 16, had been kicked out after clashing with her stepdad over curfews and clothes. Nora, 18, had been living in her car since her mom died, scraping by on diner tips. Chloe, 15, barely spoke, her eyes fixed on the floor, nodding when anyone addressed her. I didn't push them to talk. I knew what it was like to carry a story too heavy to share. If you're here today, I told them, you deserve to stay. We set a rhythm. Mornings were for chores, sweeping, cooking, tending the small garden I'd started out back. Afternoons were free for reading, drawing, or just sitting quietly. Clara taught the girls to bake, her sharp corrections softened by the way she'd slip them extra pastries. "Don't burn the dough," she'd say, then nudge a plate of churros their way. I handled the rest, bills, repairs, and my design work, which I did from a corner of the old dining room, my tablet glowing late into the night. Every Saturday we had dinner together, no phones allowed. I'd cook with Clara, tacos, whatever the girls wanted. The rule was simple: you could talk or stay silent, no pressure. At first the table was quiet, just the clink of forks and Chloe's soft nods. But slowly it changed. Ava started sharing stories about her old skateboard, how she'd sneak out to practice tricks. Nora talked about her mom, her voice catching but steady. Chloe stayed silent longest, but one night she mumbled, "I like the blue walls." It wasn't much, but it felt like a crack in her shell. I saw myself in them, the fear, the anger, the need to be seen. I didn't try to fix their pain, I just gave them space to breathe, to feel safe. One afternoon, I caught Chloe leaving a slice of Clara's bread on Ava's windowsill with a note. "If you're hungry later." I didn't say anything, just leaned against the hallway wall, a smile tugging at my lips. Those small acts, the way they started looking out for each other, were proof New Horizon was working. I kept Bella Creations going, taking on more clients, restaurants, boutiques, even a startup in Madrid. Part of my earnings funded New Horizon, covering utilities, food, and supplies. The rest went to programs for the girls. Online art courses, job training workshops, even a laptop for Nora to practice coding. I didn't tell them where the money came from. All they needed to know was that here, no one would be left behind. When new girls arrived, I'd take them to what used to be my old bedroom, now split into an office and a reading nook. I'd point to the wooden sign above the bookshelf. "We don't promise to replace your old family, but we won't disappear." Then I'd hand them clean slippers, a set of pajamas, and ask, "Tonight, do you want to sleep or talk?" It didn't matter what they chose. What mattered was they had a choice. Some, like Sophie, a 14-year-old who jumped at loud voices, picked sleep. Others, like Ava, talked for hours, their stories spilling out like water from a broken dam. Clara, Mama Clara, as the girls started calling her, was the heart of the house. She'd teach them to knead dough, her hands guiding theirs, or show them how to paint simple designs on cookies, a nod to her artist days. But more than recipes, she taught them patience, the kind you can't learn from a book. I'd watch her with Sophie, showing her how to slice apples without rushing, and see the girl's shoulders relax, her eyes soften. Those moments were more than cooking, they were trust being rebuilt, bite by bite. We started a tradition called the Rebirth Ritual, a night where everyone brought something to share, a story, a drawing, a wish. It wasn't mandatory, but it became sacred. Ava showed us her skateboard tricks in the backyard, wobbling but grinning. Nora read a poem about her mom, her voice steady by the end. Chloe, after weeks of silence, brought a tiny sketch of the house, the blue walls glowing under a starry sky. I hung it in the kitchen, right next to Clara's old apron. Running New Horizon wasn't easy. There were bills that stretched my budget, nights I stayed up worrying about the next repair, moments when a girl's pain reminded me of my own. But it was worth it. Every laugh, every shared meal, every time Sophie looked up instead of down. It was proof that pain didn't have to be the end. I'd turned my parents' house, their symbol of abandonment, into a foundation for something real. I didn't need the world to know my story. The girls' voices in the kitchen, Ava's shy hugs, Clara's quiet nods, they were my answers. I kept designing, kept giving, kept building. New Horizon wasn't just a house. It was a declaration. No one gets to decide your worth, not even the people who leave you behind. And in that declaration, I found my own healing, not by forgetting the past, but by making it the ground I built on. A year after New Horizon opened its doors, the house felt alive in a way it never had when I was a kid. The creaky floors didn't echo with arguments anymore. They carried the sound of footsteps, laughter, and the clatter of dishes from Clara's kitchen. The blue walls soaked up sunlight, and the backyard, once a tangle of weeds, bloomed with wildflowers the girls had planted. I'd walk through the rooms sometimes, just listening, and feel something I hadn't in years. Peace, not the kind my parents chased when they left me behind, but the kind you earn by building something true. That afternoon the kitchen was a warm glow of chaos. Sunlight poured through the big window, catching the edges of the table where Chloe was folding napkins, her movements careful but sure. The air smelled of cinnamon and sugar, Clara's latest batch of cookies cooling on a rack. Upstairs, Ava and Nora were bickering over the evening's playlist, their voices drifting down like a song. It was New Horizon's 1-year anniversary, and we were celebrating. Not with anything grand, just food, music, and the kind of togetherness that doesn't need a script. Clara stood at the counter, sleeves rolled up, showing Sophie how to pipe icing onto cookies without smudging. Sophie, the newest girl, was 14, all sharp edges and quick flinches when someone spoke too loud. But under Clara's steady hands, she softened, her fingers gripping the piping bag with a focus I recognized from my own early days at La Luz. I watched them, leaning against the doorframe, afraid to move and break the moment. For Sophie, those cookies weren't just dessert. They were her first taste of belonging, of being seen. The door creaked, and Ava poked her head in, her hair in a messy bun. "Isabella, we found your old Bluetooth speaker," she announced, grinning. "It's ours now." I laughed, raising my hands in mock surrender. "Fine, but no screaming pop songs. Deal?" Ava winked and vanished, her laughter trailing behind. The party started soon after. Nothing fancy, just a long table piled with Clara's empanadas, my attempt at tacos, and a mismatched playlist that somehow worked. The girls brought their own touches. Nora's handwritten place cards, Chloe's tiny paper stars scattered across the table, Sophie's shy offering of a single painted cookie. We ate, talked, and laughed, the kind of night where silences felt comfortable, not heavy. Ava told a story about falling off her skateboard, complete with dramatic hand gestures. Nora shared a memory of her mom teaching her to braid, her voice steady now. Chloe, still quiet, smiled when Sophie nudged her a taco. I sat at the head of the table, not as a leader but as one of them, my heart full in a way I couldn't explain. This was what I'd been searching for, not just for the girls but for myself. A place where no one had to prove they were enough. After dinner we moved to the porch where Clara told old Spanish stories, her voice weaving tales of artists and dreamers. The girls listened, wrapped in blankets, Luna curled up in Sophie's lap. I stayed in the kitchen, cleaning up, the glow of the lights we'd strung around the doorframe casting soft shadows. On the counter was the framed note I'd hung the day we finished renovations. "We don't start in perfect places, but we begin again, together." I traced the words with my finger, the weight of them settling in my chest. I thought about Barcelona, those cold nights on the port bench, the hunger that clawed at me, the note that broke me. I thought about Clara's kitchen, where I learned to knead dough and trust again. I thought about Bella Creations, the designs I'd poured my heart into, the girls I'd helped find their own light. The house, once a cage of betrayal, was now a home, filled with voices and warmth. Every creak, every shadow I'd once hated was now part of something new. I stepped outside, the cool night air brushing my face. The girls were still on the porch, their laughter mixing with Clara's low hum of a Spanish lullaby. I walked to the backyard, where the wildflowers swayed under the glow of lanterns the girls had made. Simple things, paper and string, but they lit up the dark. The sky was clear, stars sharp against the black, the wind rustling through the trees like a whisper of approval. I stood there, alone but not lonely, and realized I wasn't a footnote in my parents' story anymore. I was writing my own. New Horizon wasn't just a house. It was proof that you don't need to be accepted to exist. It was for Ava, who'd found her confidence in a sketchbook, for Nora, who'd learned to smile without guilt, for Chloe, whose quiet strength grew every day, for Sophie, who was just beginning to trust, and for me, who'd turned a wound into a foundation. We were all proof that pain doesn't have to be hidden or erased. It can be the start of something meaningful. I thought about my parents, not with anger anymore, but with a kind of clarity. They'd made their choice, and I'd made mine. I didn't need their approval, their apologies, or their understanding. I had New Horizon, Clara's gruff wisdom, Luna's purring, the girls' laughter. I had Bella Creations, clients who trusted my work, and a purpose that grew with every girl who walked through our door. I had myself, not the scared 17-year-old left in a foreign city, but the woman who'd built a life from the wreckage. I went back inside, the kitchen still warm from the oven. Chloe was asleep on a chair, a spoon in her hand, Ava's blanket tucked over her. Nora had left the hallway light on, its soft glow spilling through the window. Clara was outside, sweeping leaves, her humming carrying on the breeze. I picked up my cold cup of tea, smiling at the chaos of plates and napkins. This was my life now. Not perfect, but real. Not a dream, but a beginning. I looked at the framed note one last time, then turned off the kitchen light. The lanterns outside flickered, their glow steady against the dark. I whispered to no one but myself, "This isn't just a house. This is where we start again, and this time no one gets left behind."